Good evening. This is the Gnightly Gnome Gnews. And I am your host, Jonathan Alvin, and this is Nycos RPG. Thank you for attending with us tonight. And we are going to be looking at two nations that are somewhat closely related. We are going to be dealing with the Grundim. Now, for those of you that are aware of Nycos's rather odd nomenclature, the Grundim is a term given to the rock brethren, those beings that have a direct connection to the mountainous and rocky terrain that uh, is rather extensive in the realms of Nycos on either of the major continents and inclusive of the ring of mountains that surround the northern continent. Now, as we go through this, we're going to be speaking of them in terms of not only where they are located and the kinds of cultural news that we would have for these periods, but you'll also have now an opportunity to see heraldry associated with the nations. And generally, these will be the flags or markers of the culture, so that if you see the banner, you're going to be able to be aware of who is engaged in the combat or who is involved in the story, so to speak. And so, in the future, from time to time, you'll see specifics about that. So, using our usual process here, I'm going to first of all go ahead and move the marker here on the map so that you can see where the environment that we're going to be speaking about is located, and then we'll switch over and we will talk about each one in particular. So the magic check mark heads over here to the Grith Wall. It's a mountain range that makes up basically the spine of the continent of Gollum. And now we will head over to the Grith Wall. Alrighty, so here are the 9 news nuggets you need to know for Nycos RPG as of September 28th, 2023. And the Grith Wall is known as the stronghold of the Everdark. It's kind of a humorous name only because the Grith Wall is actually not in the Everdark. It is associated with it and does represent the gateway to the planar activity that goes on in the Everdark, but it itself is actually within the soil and the rock of Nycos proper. So today's stories we're going to start with is that the Habilitatus is being renovated. The structure used with a full former name of Homo habilitatus, which was representative of the way of habilitating the human population before indoctrinating them into the ways of the Gren and brought into the Everdark to operate for the then much more nefarious Grimm, is now being established as a commerce center and convention center. It's very strange to see, but the Grimm are in the process of basically a global attempt to rehabilitate their image, having been a nemesis culture for several iterations. In the 8th iteration, negotiations were completed, and the Grimm agreed to de-escalate and to sort of return to communication at the negotiating table. And the advance has continued all the way through into now then the 9th iteration, where the arguably the some of the most poorly acknowledged locations of the Grim environment are now becoming tourist traps fundamentally. And so Habilitatus in its renovation will be the resource with the largest convention center and singular speaking platform in the world, The Grim being highly effective in the construction and building phase have basically carved out the inside of a mountain and through particularly effective engineering feats have caused a vocalization platform that can be heard even by somebody whispering from the stage to the completely opposite end of the structure and in the highest of the balconies. So it's a big thing, and this habilitatus is going to be open for use in the near future. They are being a little bit cagey about how long it will take, but they definitely are saying that it will happen before what they call Candlefall. Perhaps they know something we don't know, but according to all the indications, we are still between the iterations, and so it should not, in theory, be immediate. But we will see about that. Now, additionally, being one of the oldest cultures, they have actually already started to work on a understanding of the dark shard technology, having been one of the few species that were holding one of the shards at the end of the eighth iteration. They were the culture that determined that the shards actually can be uh, repaired or restored or regrown, depending on how you look at the culture and the study. But the idea here is that they already have at least one, if not all, of the various permutations of the shards and are working to find ways to use them and understand the ninth iteration technical changes that may have happened. But they haven't yet succeeded. And if you are a magi of considerable power and would like to become a part of the process, they have uh, started to open job opportunities within the nation and are actively advertising for that. As a matter of fact, miners and spelunkers, as well as technologists, are invited to apply for positions in this endeavor. Now, interestingly enough, in the shadow of this great advance, the devotees of Brissom magic, who are many within the grim culture, have been questioned concerning certain effects that have been experienced in the last few months. There have been several uh, examples of Brissomic magic being accused of being used on a large scale in that. Ooh, hang on a second here. Hang on a second. Hang on just a second here. Curiouser and curiouser. Hang on just a second. Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Sorry for being enigmatic there. One more moment. Well, interesting. Anyway, the this questioning of the Brissom advocates has not shown itself to be highly effective, and as a matter of fact, it seems that there may or may not actually be a direct link between the strange sounds and effects and um, the actual practice of Brissom magic. So that'll be remaining to be seen. But due to that, due to the fear that there may be some connection with the dark magics and the grim, the access to the undersky is in moratorium for beings who are living in the periphery of the Everdark, and so this has caused quite a bit of concern. Now, this is also in light of the fact that the Grim ambassador, who has yet to be officially named, I guess I should say a Grim ambassador, shall be set to travel soon into the Everdark to negotiate for a return of free trade. But this is a little problematic now and a little tense, so there may or may not be confrontations along this vein in the future, and no pun intended with the vein. Now, uh, this also is an association with the fact that there is going to be a new fortress, a new access point in the coming future that will allow for freer trade with the surface. And this will be established once there has been an enjoined who endeavors to cross into the Grim territories. This is in part because they are waiting for a sign for their own culture to recognize and open this pathway, but also because of the overall concern that they do not want to become embroiled in surface politics if they can avoid it. And so this is yet remaining to be seen. Now, because of the access to the moratorium, surprisingly, a Jubileethan caravan was discovered actually attempting to pass from the Everdark into the Grithwall. And this is a major change in that the Jubileethans historically have always approached the Grim from the Everdark. From the Undersky access ways, and so it was a surprise for them to be discovered so far from that place and in one of the Everdark access places. So this is going to be rather challenging as well. And it really does uh, hinge on whether or not the Grim get access through the enjoined to surface politics at all. So we will see. And because of these issues, the Emperor Kiros is going to address the nation, announce his ambassador and such. Again, they're saying that they're going to time this to coincide with the renovation at Habilitatus and may actually be the first time that facility will be used for a major event. So we will keep you abridged, keep you aware of what's going on there. Appraised was the word I was looking for. And now we're going to turn our attention to their rock brethren, who actually are the denizens of the undersky, and that is Greyheim. And the citadel of the undersky in Greyheim is located in the Silverblade mountain range in the continent of Yarlum. So let me change really quickly. Let's go back to our offices, so to speak, here. And we move our arrow. So you'll see we're going from the Grithwall over here to the Silverblades. And this is where the Greyheim location is. So once I've shown you that, we'll go back to Greyheim. Ooh, yes. So surprisingly, the greatest news here is that the Habilitatis will be renovated for tourism, because although it is within the holding of Grithwall, it is above the mountain range and is on the surface of Nycos. It is actually the engineers of Greyheim who are doing the work, and so it is a major news story for all Grundom. So that story is monopolizing the news of both continents. The engineers have traveled great distances to be here, and while there are some that are local, the majority of the visiting Grund uh, engineers are living in actually the very lands that were used to house the human uh, initiates, shall we call them, in the seventh iteration, or sixth iteration. Now, it's interesting to note that the Greyheim Citadel, found on the Yarlan continent, was never visited in the eighth, and so the Grund are particularly in a front from the unfair action placed by those who visit. They have the largest collection of collected artifacts, mainly because they are in the active process of purchasing surface located artifacts, things that were basically stolen from the Everdark and the areas of the Grim and kept by beings of the Undersky. And so they are working to amass a large collection of this, in part to establish a more direct connection with their Grim brethren, but it also in part to establish and maintain the heart of their Grundom culture, which is the merger between the two species. So, and as a side note, the School of Engineering at the Citadel is the most intense regimen for learning about mechanistic and engineering feats, particularly dealing in the construction field uh, on the planet. And so the fact that it is going to be the first iterational conclave that is going to actually embrace other species, there are a considerable number of riots that are going on because the Grund have such a history of being collectively isolationist and don't appreciate them being in there. Now, in the process of this school becoming prepared for operation, a national operation did capture several Everdark spies. There are no comments that have been released whether or not these are Grim or other species, but nonetheless, they are all labeled as Everdark spies. And this sting operation was set up to actually capture those that would be involved in possible sabotage or work slowage issues. So, and this is actually following on the heels of the recent vandalization of a weather station in the southern part of the Silverblades. And this weather station's damage, fortunately, wasn't enough to cause the facility to be condemned, but it did quite drastically affect their ability to provide ample predictions of when the ninth iteration will indeed begin. Now, there are rumors in several sectors suggesting that the iteration has already begun, but the Grund, who are normally known for being the most uh, open about their awareness about it, have not yet spoken to it. Now, it is important to note that in light of this, the ancient Falan temple dig that is in the mid range of the Silver Blades does continue, and there are several advances that have been done culturally to embrace the trade with the surface dwelling nations and to provide access to the Everdark marketplace that has been fundamentally off limits for the Grund for quite some time. And the reason why there are delays in that is that there are several considerations that are being offered by the Makers Confederation. That is the collected unions of the surface dwelling species that are being questioned by the Grund as far as how efficient such a trade would be, and more importantly, what the outcome of such trade negotiations might be. Now, as I mentioned, the Grimm have been pursuing research into sounds that may have been associated with the Abyssum uh, functionality, but the the Grundim of Greyheim have been actively researching the sounds as well, because since it's been determined to not come from the Everdark, the cause of this very loud and very pronounced sonic seeming attack or whatever is being researched, and there'll be more information as we get to it. So, having gone through this information, I do want to thank you for participating in tonight's episode. I am Jonathan Albin, and this is Nycos RPG. This has been the 9 news nuggets you need to know, and part of the Nycos Nightly Gnome News. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I will be signing off in just a few moments. I do have a comment I need to make first, so I'll be right back. I do try to stay in contact through chat. I prefer to be in the open channel, but I sometimes get whispers, so I've got to resolve this one. Do you have anything to comment? Feel free to put it into the chat or comments box, and I will respond as quickly as I can. I'm already. So, having resolved the issues they had in the back end, and not specifically seeing any particular conversation that somebody wants to start at this point, I will be endeavoring to drop out for the night, and we will see you guys on the next episode. If you like what you see, make sure you follow us on Twitch, and also check out our YouTube channel at Nycos RPG. And if you do that, please subscribe as well, because it really helps us to get the word out. In the meantime, thank you again for being here tonight, and we will see you next time on Nightly Gnome News. This is Jonathan Albin. We're here every night at 11 p.m. or so, and we will see you again soon. Eventually, I get this hand down, so I get used to doing that.